he doesn't jump off the TV. He got good, when he's older than a lot of the players. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think there's just quarterbacks in any draft where you have to look at it and you go, can this guy elevate the roster that I have? Can he take a bad situation and make it better? Or if I put this player in a good situation, is this guy going to play really well?
Okay.
I still think you put Daniel Jones in a really good situation, he's going to play really well. He's had a hurt Saquon Barkley. He's had wide receiver issues. He's had multiple coaches. I'm not making excuses for him, but that's what's happened. And so with Kenny Pickett, I think that's what teams are going to have to decide. Is this guy change my current locker room and my situation? Or if I put this guy in a situation, how's it going to look? And what he showed his senior year was you put him in a good situation. He had a good wideout. He had a good defense. And he lit it up and was a Heisman finalist. So I think that's the team by team. They've got to look. What are we asking this player to solve for? And what pick are we willing to use to have him solve that problem?
Malik Willis plays at a smaller level of football. So did Carson Wentz. I could look at it and say, Carson Wentz, you ask a lot. You did. But then I think to myself, well, Carson Wentz was an MVP leader after about 10 weeks a few years ago. Malik Willis, what do you see? How long would it take?
I think Malik has a really high ceiling. It's funny. People ask me, they go, who's Malik's physical comp? I go, Devin White, who's a freak action figure looking linebacker for Tampa Bay. So I just don't know who you compare Malik to. I think teams are going to look at this and they're going to go, what part of what he did at Liberty translates? Yeah. And then what part needs to be developed? Do we have the program to develop it? When it comes to running, when it comes to throwing, decision-making, I think that he showed what he is. The low-key, and I said this about Trey Lance last year, the low-key kind of thing my favorite thing about Malik Willis is he's a magnet. He's one of the more likable guys you'll be around.
By the way, that stuff matters.
It matters. It doesn't show up on the back of a football card or in Madden ratings, but it's super relevant when adding a young, high-pick quarterback to a room, and he's about as likable as it gets, and that's going to be relevant.
So let me the Kyler Murray situation, I would pay him because there's nothing else out there in Arizona, and he transformed the organization, so pay him. But I've got multiple people I respect. Larry Fitzgerald's they gave him a lot too soon. There's some maturity issues. I know enough people in that organization. I trust them. They see what they have. But he also is smaller, and I grew up with Fran Tarkington. When you're under 6 feet, quarterbacks tend to move, passing lanes open, Russell, Tarkington. That's just I get it. These
you got to create time and space.
Yeah, and they're all 6'7" now up front. But he's been hurt the last couple years. He's been bad post-Thanksgiving. Let's get past the money thing. Should I be concerned that a smaller athlete's been hurt multiple years? This league beats you up. He's not quite the same quarterback in week 16 as week 8, and that may be what he is that this sport is hard. You get hit. We know this. Drew Brees one year, as he got older, took 5 games off, came back refreshed. Drew looked like a rookie.
Yeah.
Should I be concerned a little bit? Size, beating, injuries, late season, huge moment. We also have an NFL story that we got to get to, and it's a breaking story. Deebo Samuel, a wildly valuable player for the 49ers, has asked the team to trade him. You would like to send him to the other conference. Keep your eye on the Patriots and specifically the Jets. So the Jets don't pay their quarterback anything. They don't pay a lot of players top dollar. The Jets don't. So they got some space, and they also have 2 top 10 picks. So the Jets could give the Niners, they don't want both picks. Because they got a lot of, they don't want both picks, but they would take most. This is not a good enough draft to have 2 picks in the top 10. I was told by a GM a couple of weeks ago, all these teams with 2 picks would like to get rid of 1. Now, New Orleans is the opposite. They want more picks because they need a receiver and a left tackle, and it's good in the draft for both those. So if I wonder if San Francisco goes to the Patriots and says, or goes to the Jets and says, okay, give me your number 10 pick, because Jets may not give up the 4. Give me your 10 pick and give me one of your receivers. Or do they go to the Patriots and say, you don't have as good a pick, but I want Kendrick Bourne back and 3 picks. But
do
we know
the Patriots have the money for Deebo?
Well,
remember they spent all that money in free agency.
Well, they didn't pay J.C. Jackson, Shaq Mason, and not paying Mac Jones. So that you can, let's be honest. The smart teams figure out how to pay good players. Most of them do. Now, Green Bay's a little trapped with Aaron's contract, but most of the time, you can figure out how to.
Well, because Deebo wants money. That's what started the issue with San
Well,
Francisco.
he wants money, but I go back to my theory. I think he's pushing back a little on how he's used. If you're going to use me 30% of the time as a running back, then I want a little running back money and wide receiver money.
Which is fair.
Let's bring on Jordan Palmer, quarterback consultant, coach at Elite 11, played in the NFL for 6 years. He's got his company, the Quarterback Summit Tour, 6 cities down, 6 to go. You do this for a living. You deal with quarterbacks and players. For the record, having played in the NFL, let me just ask you on the Deebo Samuel situation. They use him. It's a little Cooper Kupp but with more running back. Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp, a lot of jet sweep stuff.
Yeah.
Deebo, we're going to put you at running back. Do you think there is some truth to my belief that he's like, man, this is a physical. You're asking me to do stuff no other receiver in the league is asked to do. Carry the ball. Take hits. And that part of it is either use me differently or pay me for 2 positions.
Yeah, I think again, this is just a perspective here, outside looking in, but I think it's got to be a combination of the two. Clearly, with what the receiver market, and Joy, you talked about it in the last hour, clearly what the receiver market's doing, okay, well, this is what the market dictates, this is what I want, but yeah, the way that they use him, he's not necessarily complementing another piece. And George Kittle is as good as it gets at the position, but Brandon Ayuk was a first-round pick. He hasn't been what you hope a first-round receiver's been, and so they've had to use him so many different ways. And yeah, he can go somewhere else, but those are all. If he goes to the Jets, that's kind of the old Niners staff over there. They're gonna use you the way that you're productive, and so I don't see a whole lot changing for him outside of a new team.
You know, it is. Receivers have exploded. You deal with quarterbacks a lot. You deal with Drake London. So we've been saying this in the draft. It's a good receiver draft. I don't know if it's
Very
great. Good. So I'm going to throw a couple of players at you right now, a couple of young guys. Drake London, USC. He doesn't have separation speed. So how do I use him in the NFL? What is he in the NFL?
I think that he's as good of a young receiver as you can get for a young quarterback. Because if you're the Jets, if you're Mac Jones, if you're any of these teams that have a young quarterback, if you have a receiver who has catch radius, I'll take that over a guy who can go get you yards after catch, right? Yards after catch can bail you out of situations because they can take a slant and they can create more than an 8-yard gain. But when you have catch radius, which with Drake London, I mean, he's 6'5". It's the catch radius is as good as I've been around playing, watching, coaching. So when you have that type of player extends drives for you. Young quarterbacks need to have drives extended. They don't just need the home run shot. And so I know a lot of quarterbacks feel this way. I'll take catch radius and body control over 40 time, over somebody who just runs a 4.3, because you're going to create more value for me over time because you're going to extend more drives, you're going to get me more attempts, and ultimately going to get me more big plays down the field. QB
Summit Tour, 6 cities down, 6 to go with Jordan Palmer, quarterback consultant. Let me ask you, so before we get to this draft, I want to ask you about a quarterback, because you deal with all these guys. The kid USC got from Oklahoma, Caleb Williams. So he's not a big guy. He's like 6'1". I really trust your judgment on this. He moves around because I watched him like the rest of the country. I watched him last year for the first time. He moves around. He's kind of what the quarterback position in college is becoming, and the NFL increasingly is leaning into. What am I going to see if I'm a college fan with Caleb Williams?
Well, so I met him probably sophomore, junior year in high school, going through the Elite 11 process. And he's just proven to be this. I just think he's an adult. I mean, have you talked to him yet?
No.
Okay, when you get a chance to sit down and talk to him, and maybe not in this setting, but when you talk to him, you're going to have that. You're going to go, this kid's like 25 years old, right? Even though he's 20 or whatever he is. He's just an adult. So I think he's handled the bigness of being the number 1 recruit and being, the Elite 11 MVP and all the things, whatever his rankings were at the time. He went into a situation with Spencer Rattler where everything's about Spencer. Spencer had, big NIL money, everything at Oklahoma. He's supposed to be a high pick. He's supposed to win the Heisman. And he came in, he just sat on the bench and he waited. And then when his time came in this game versus Texas, I don't remember what he did, but it was historic. And then he just rolled from there. And then I think the way he handled this offseason, essentially the most highly sought after free agent in college football, right? And the whole way, what would you say was negative about how he handled it?
Oh, I thought it was great.
A negative thing about it.
No, he basically hid, and he and Lincoln figured it out.
And it's just all been positive, and nothing's been about him. It hasn't been self-centered. So I think you're going to see all sorts of plays that he's going to make down the field with his legs, with his arm. But in general, they just have an adult. And at USC, you talk about it all the time, being the quarterback of the Cowboys, being a Laker. Well, in this new era of USC football, being the USC quarterback, I think is going to lump into that because it's for young guys, right? College players. And I think we're going to see him set the bar of of what it looks like to handle this well.
Okay, so this is not what you would call as dynamic a quarterback draft as we've seen. The Kenny Pickett kid, he's older. He's like 23. He's a lot of college. He popped his last year. He had an injury earlier. There's a ball security issue. He's fine. I mean, I look at him and I think he's an NFL quarterback. But what if I said to you, I don't know, he's Daniel Jones of the Giants. I don't know. He moves well. Size is fine. But Daniel Jones felt like a reach. He turned the ball over a lot. Are there any similarities? But my concerns on Pickett is